Deutsche Bank knew the size of Trump economy. Deutsche Bank knew all of these things were false, but they lent Trump the money anyways, and Trump paid it back with interest on time. Deutsche Bank never complained to anyone. So this is literally a victimless crime. There is no victim here. There's no harm to Deutsche Bank. There's no harm to anyone, and no one ever complained. The only reason Trump is being prosecuted is for purely political reasons, and everyone knows it. James is targeting him only because she dislikes his politics, and that is the textbook definition of selective prosecution.
Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Bedford, and I'm here with commentary editor Conn Carroll. Senator James Lankford is running for the number 5 spot in the Senate, the Senate Republican Conference Vice Chair. Excuse me. But he's doing that hot off of a defeat of his bipartisan immigration deal.
Yes. So I think it's not super surprising he's going to do this, because it definitely was a step down to have McConnell and all the leadership basically pull back from what they had been saying was a very necessary bill. So this was the bill that would have funded Ukraine, Israel, and had some other foreign policy money in it. But the heart of the bill was this border provision. And it just was terrible. So Lankford put out this material, which he said his new bill would detain and deport migrants. But the actual text of the bill did the exact opposite. It mandated catch and release. And as this became known, Republican senators just ran away from him as fast as possible. And I just think it's going to be really hard for him to win this slot after that debacle.
What do you think about the way the rest of the Senate leadership contests are playing out right now? Do you see any clear front runners? Do you think it's going to be a while before we have an idea of what the Senate GOP leadership is going to look like?
So it does look like Barrasso has nailed down the number 2 slot. He's gotten Trump's endorsement. He doesn't really have any competition. But you still have 2 big races, which is one, the leadership position, the top one, and that's between 2 Johns. You got Cornyn versus Thune. But then you also have another interesting race for policy conference chair, and that's between Senator Cotton and Senator Ernst. So Senator Ernst is more of a McConnell leadership establishment track set,
right?
Whereas Cotton has been a member of the more conservative steering committee. He definitely has more, national security defense roots than a lot of the more hardcore conservatives like Ted Cruz or Mike Lee, but he definitely has more of that populist edge that Ernst and other candidates don't. So those 2 races are wide open and pretty fascinating.
So shifting gears to New York, as of this taping, math is hard, on Monday, Trump has to cover a $454 million bond unless a court intervenes. The state can start seizing his assets in this civil fraud judgment that's been pretty heavily criticized on both sides of the aisle. What do you think about how this situation is playing out?
I think it's just a travesty of democracy. We're not supposed to have selective prosecutions, but this is just a textbook selective prosecution. So what you have here is a New York civil fraud statute.
So not technically a prosecution because there was nothing to prosecute.
Right. But in order to get this civil judgment, it's very easy to get it because one, you don't have to prove the defendant, in this case Trump, was trying to defraud anyone. And second, you don't have to prove that Trump harmed anyone. In this case, there's no harm. So the transactions that are the subject of this are documents over 11-year span between Trump and Deutsche Bank, which is a huge $100 billion, international bank, and they've lent Trump money a number of times. And what Letitia James is saying is that in a couple of those documents, Trump misrepresented or lied about certain assets. So he inflated the size of his Manhattan apartment by 3 times, and he said some buildings were done and completed and had been finished, but they are still under construction. And another time he said that certain buildings were not subject to rent control, but they were. So these were false statements. But Deutsche Bank is not just some mom and pop consumer going around, buying, toothpaste. They are a sophisticated bank that did their own analysis of these assets. So Deutsche Bank knew the size of Trump economy. Deutsche Bank knew all of these things were false, but they lent Trump the money anyways, and Trump paid it back with interest on time. Deutsche Bank never complained to anyone. So this is literally a victimless crime. There is no victim here. There's no harm to Deutsche Bank. There's no harm to anyone. And no one ever complained. The only reason Trump is being prosecuted is for purely political reasons, and everyone knows it. James is targeting him only because she dislikes his politics, and that is the textbook definition of selective prosecution.
You are now kind of seeing the right and left legal community being united in questioning whether asking him to pay this bond, because for anyone who doesn't know, in order for him to appeal what is widely viewed as an unfair judgment, he has to pay the money first.
Right.
And in order to have that amount of cash, he's going to have to sell some properties quickly, which his lawyers are arguing will cause irreparable harm to him because it's not like he can just go buy them back.
Right.
So what do you think about that?
This is a rule, a civil procedure rule that is unique to New York. This is not in the federal system or many other state systems, but it is the rule under New York. You're correct. In order to be actually to challenge the verdict and start the process where he can appeal it, he has to put up this money. So there is a Hail Mary possibility that an appeals court will say, look, this is way too punitive. You should be able to settle for a much smaller bond. And I believe Trump's side has said, look, we can do 100 million. But a lot of insurance companies just have legal limits about how much they can put up on any one thing. And also, James is very purposely, trying to screw and attack Trump. So if you're a insurance company or a business or a bank in New York, do you want to be the one that helps out New York or that helps out Donald Trump?
Right. Do you want to get a target drawn on you?
Exactly. Do you want a target on your back for Letitia James to go after? So it's just that, complete arbitrary prosecutorial abuse that's going on that is really very troublesome.
Well, Conn, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely.
You can get more writing from Conn and the rest of the commentary team at washingtonexaminer.com.